Back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering all the Week 14 action. So to get straight into it with Thursday Night Football, and starting out with the Cowboys and Lions. Well, in this one, essentially, you had teams on both parts here reverting back to their old ways. What do I mean by that? Well, the Lions, even with them being stopped for a field goal with the contributions from James Houston IV, getting the sack in the red zone. I mean, they were just going straight to work, getting down there, deploying every single one of their weapons, whether it was Jahmyr Gibbs getting active out of the backfield or having Emmanwori St. Brown make an impact as well, early and often on the drive. That would be constant for them throughout the entirety of this game. Even when it felt like the Cowboys might have had them backed into a little bit of a corner, they just did not slow down. The Cowboys themselves would get into a bit of an early response themselves, as it didn't take much. You have to appreciate, if you are a Cowboys fan, having Brandon Aubrey on your team. It didn't take them much. A simple conversion by George Pickens and a simple conversion by Jake Ferguson. George Pickens will become relevant in the worst way, as he would literally be stopped, having Avonte Maddox lock him down on a later third down on this drive. That is an entirely different situation that we'll get into. Nevertheless, the sheer amount of strength that this man possesses as a kicker is genuinely something that has worked to the Cowboys' benefit time and time again. By that point, as soon as they got the play to Ferguson, they were already in Aubrey range. And he just banged it in from 57 yards out to get them on the board on what would be an exceptional day for him, especially. But man, even though they got another early stop on the Lions following this, that would be one of the last times they'd really make this Lions team uncomfortable on the offensive front. They managed to back him up, and granted, you're kind of playing right into your hands at that point. They got Sam Williams to get a solid tackle on David Montgomery, not allow him to get a large gain, keeping the Lions off schedule, and eventually forcing the punt. But the Cowboys themselves, in a game like this, you needed to set the tone. Because if it got into a situation where you had to try to outscore this Lions team, first of all, you know what happened last year. You know what happened last year. The 47-9 beatdown that the Lions put on you without Aiden Hutchinson. You needed to get far ahead of the curve in this game. If you had to try to outscore this team, you weren't coming remotely close to winning this. And even though the Cowboys defense had turned it around for a few weeks now, we are still very recognizant of exactly what they are as a unit. Without question. It took them no time. And you immediately had them on a second and long hit up Amon-Ra St. Brown down the middle of the field with R.J. Stewart guarding him for some reason, by the way. I didn't really understand that. But he gets himself open for a 26-yard gain, and inevitably, you have Jahmyr Gibbs punch it in on one of his first rushing touchdowns. Keep in mind that this is a man still on pace to break the milestone of most scrimmage touchdowns before the age of 24. He was only a few away, and they're at home at this point. So this could be a special night for him, potentially, if things worked out a certain way. But in time, it would get to that point. The Lions still had their own gaffes on defense. Mind you, compared to the Cowboys, they are legitimately depleted everywhere. And it got even worse later on in the game, as I'll detail. But I mean, in between having multiple linebackers down, you still have Thomas Harper, the backup safety, in for Kirby Joseph. Everything was just not like it wasn't going to be clean for this Lions defense. And I think they had to expect that coming into the game. Still, they got exposed. And more specifically, as much as I hate to say it, with the man being a former Seahawk, Tom again, they went after DJ Reed Jr., especially when the Lions were lined up in man coverage. And they went to town on that man, single-handedly. It continued with CeeDee Lamb getting a first down conversion here, and ultimately the Cowboys would settle for another field goal. And while they would continue to get it done, I mean, literally the first play of this next drive, after they forced another 3-and-out on the Lions, they have a chance to take the lead, and they get CeeDee Lamb streaking down the field. Like, DJ Reed, I guess at this point, is playing man, but he's backed off of him because he doesn't want to get beat over the top. Yet he gives him so much leverage that CeeDee Lamb just streaks right past him anyways. And he's wide open, getting immediately into Lions territory. Fortunately for that defense, though, after you would have Dak Prescott get in a situation where he was forced behind the line of scrimmage and also fumble the football at the same time, 2nd and 26 was going to be damn near insurmountable for them if they couldn't dial up the right play call. And naturally they would respond, but limited it. You get them in a 3rd down situation. All you really need to do, you're just looking for something short. You're not trying to lose any more yardage. Even at the 47-yard line, your own 47-yard line, you are still near Brandon Aubrey range. But Brian Branch, with the menacing safety that he is, popped that ball right out of Jake Ferguson's hands and got the Lions the ball right back to take their own slice of momentum out of this ball game. And, oh man, it got all bad. Deron Bland had honestly been doing fine, but Jamison Williams would inevitably get his on him for 25 yards. And then, to change up the pace a little bit, they subbed in Knuckles, and Knuckles busted his way through that entire defense. They actually kind of had him dead to rights for a little bit. But that is the allure of David Montgomery's power. He is a relentless fucking runner. And that has been the case since he's been a Lion. To a lesser extent, it was happening in Chicago. But again, nobody could have predicted how things would turn out for him at that time. He was just bowling over everybody. And as he got out of that jam, he had daylight. Gone for a 35-yard touchdown run to give the Lions a 17-6 lead just like that. I mean, the Cowboys, again, at times they had the answer. They had the method, single-handedly attacking DJ Reed down the field, and they consistently won the battle. In fact, they drew a pass interference on him that could have extended their drive even further if not for a penalty offsetting here. They still managed to work their way down the field, though, and would get into field goal range to have Brandon Aubrey get yet another 50-plus yard field goal, this time from 55. And while the Lions did not convert on their first drive fully, even though they entered the game having the second most points on an opening drive in the NFL with 45, they ended out the first half in the exact same way that they started it, continuing to work themselves down the field in less than a full minute, impressively enough, and score another field goal to go up. As you got to go back to what Greg Olson said in the Seahawks-Rams game. Field goals don't beat good teams. They get you beat against good teams, essentially. And again, you can credit the Cowboys for having a response and holding it down defensively enough for them to compete. But if your offense is just going to constantly settle for field goal after field goal after field goal, no matter how good Brandon Aubrey is, that ain't enough when this Lions offense is scorching hot. And the last thing you could do, the very last thing you could do, is serve them up opportunities to score immediately. Well, promptly, on the very first play, oh man, you can't make that up. You can't make that up, man. I mean, immediately, you have them force an incomplete pass on Dak Prescott with Amik Robertson, getting the breakup, and then it falls into the hands of Derek Barnes for an instant interception. And the Lions promptly score in just a matter of 34 seconds with Isaac Tisla, the rookie, getting in for a 12-yard touchdown catch to take it up to 27-9. They mentioned a graphic stating that the Lions had 21 straight wins in the regular season when leading at halftime, and they couldn't have gotten off to a much better start of protecting said lead. But at least the Cowboys did start to activate some offensive play of their own. They just continued to go at DJ Reed. It was tough to watch, man. You got another chunk play from CeeDee Lamb down the field, just completely bullying DJ Reed at this point. That's exactly what it felt like. But it didn't end up mattering. As they would be forced the Cowboys to go for it on 4th and short at that point. 18-point ball game early in the third quarter. You don't know how much you can trust your defense at that point, given that just happened. You got to try to get some momentum going. And while George Pickens would pick up the first down, it was in such an unexplainable way. I don't know. Like the entire game, they had tape of him just completely doing whatever on the football field. And when it came time to it, given the fact that CeeDee Lamb on one of these plays before, and essentially he got himself in a situation where CeeDee Lamb would be taken out of the game with a concussion. Let's put it like that. And in that moment, they needed George Pickens to step up. He had been quiet for most of that game, but you're thinking at that moment, with you also being a number 1 caliber wide receiver, hey, we need you to do something for us. And they do the right thing. They go to him. He picks up the first down, but inexplicably, instead of just getting down at that point, securing the play, he tries to do a little too much. And while you can't always question the effort, Avonte Maddox would get his hands on the football, and it would damn near go back to the Lions, if not for Tyler Smith managing to get up there and recover the football. So that could have been disastrous. And those kinds of things marked George Pickens' night, unfortunately. And he would not hear the end of it. But in the moment, Javonte Williams would run for a 1-yard score to get it back. The Lions wasted absolutely no time getting right back to work. And especially Jahmyr Gibbs. Again, Deron Bland is a great corner for this team. But after he got the initial TFL on Jahmyr Gibbs in this, he got exposed, okay? Think about this. You have a third down on their side of the field. And It's a short pass, check down to Jahmyr Gibbs. DaRon Bland has a chance to make a play, okay? He has a chance to make a play. And the angle of pursuit is fine. Like, he's right there with him. Jahmyr Gibbs takes one shift in direction and makes this man, DaRon Bland, fall to the ground. His fucking body buckles below him, and he drops to his knees as Jahmyr Gibbs picks up the first down. As embarrassing as that was, it got worse. Because after a different chunk play to Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs would then proceed to stiff arm his ass. Man, that is such a downside to the job. But at the very least, DaRon Bland can say that he stuck with it. He forced him out of bounds at that point. And rarely, the Lions failed to hit Amon-Ra St. Brown up on the routine short route that he'll run in these third down situations. Then Sam Williams managed to make another special teams play and block the kick. So it didn't end up doing that much damage. I mean, the Cowboys, again, they couldn't keep settling for field goals, but they just kept it going. They had Ryan Flanoy get himself quite a game in this, as ironically enough, they were looking for George Pickens to be the guy, and Ryan Flanoy managed to be the main target. Not only did he get himself a massive gain to open up the drive, but he also got deep downfield into the Detroit red zone. And that catch would have stood if not for George Pickens taking it upon himself to flatten the living shit out of one of the Lions' defenders, intended to guard up. Like, it was a pick route, so that's going to be legal if you run it in a certain way. George Pickens just ran straight into the man. Ran right into him. And at that point, how do you not expect them to call that? Promptly, that would be a wasted drive, but Brandon Aubrey, with that robotic bionic leg of his, kicked a fucking 63-yard field goal to give them an 8-point deficit, bring them within one possession. And also with that, become the very first player in NFL history with 3 different field goals of 55 or more yards in a single game. He's a fucking monster. All right, he's too good at this. Too good at this shit. The Lions were trying their hardest to put it away a little bit, but it would take quite a while. They go predominantly run on this. They try to balance it out, but inevitably, with the Lions defense holding up and having both DaRon Bland and DeMarvion overshown, combined for a crucial tackle out in space, Jake Bates would make this field goal to make this an 11-point ball game. And then things just got completely out of whack. The Lions defense, they'd gotten beaten good a few times in this game. In fact, I think there was a mention that stated that when they targeted DJ Reed Jr. alone, he had given up about 120 receiving yards by himself. So it was that kind of night for him. But it managed to get even worse as you had them get Ryan Flanoy just completely wide open. Somehow, I don't even know which Lions player was guarding him, but they just completely lost their fucking mind, lost all sense of space, and he just ran free into the end zone for a 42-yard touchdown while also getting the 2-point conversion. All of a sudden, it looked enticing. And then it was stripped away from them. James Houston IV, although he would get a good sack, on Jared Goff early. He ended up being a little too late here. Not only did that draw a roughing the passer penalty, but Jameson Williams had already gotten himself right down the field for a 29-yard gain. And Jahmyr Gibbs, with the exceptional blocking, I should say, on a couple of these next few plays, Jahmyr Gibbs would get right in for a rushing touchdown again, his second of the day. And while the Cowboys would get the ball back, they try to run with some tempo because they understood, like, man, we got to shorten this lead up as soon as possible. And, I mean, hey, they would get in a field goal far before the 2-minute warning. But at that point, you needed a stop. You needed one stop from this defense. And what's been the story for that defense the entire season? As Amon-Ra St. Brown promptly got himself open over the middle of the field. And I mean open. Like, there are multiple defenders for the Cowboys that have eyes on him, but they just give him one of the most versatile wide receivers, one of the best route running and physical wide receivers in the NFL, a great amount of space because it's an option route. He can do whatever the fuck he wants with that much space in the middle of the field. And he promptly takes them down 37 yards. Then, with that blocking the pull from the center, the backup center for them, the Lions. Once Jahmyr Gibbs, I saw the play live, once he broke that shit to the outside, he was gone. For another 13-yard touchdown run, his third of the night, to cap off what would be the milestone-tying touchdown for him. And now he just needs one more to break history, break Lions history also. It's definitely special. And he deserves it with the kind of player that he has turned out to be for them. Yet again, they're both great running backs, but like everybody thought that Bijan Robinson, we got to take it back there. Everybody thought when they passed up on Bijan Robinson and got Jahmyr Gibbs that they got a far inferior player compared to the man out of Texas. Instead, that has consistently, for both teams, when it comes to their play on the field, been win-wins for both teams. By far. And I don't think the Lions fans can be mad at that shit anymore. Like, he's been a beast since he's walked onto the shit, man. The Cowboys had a last-ditch effort here, and while Flanoy would keep the drive alive, while they get Kevontae Turpin open out in front, and he utilizes speed to work the way down the field, they already burned too much time off, and Al-Quadin Muhammad, who himself has had a pretty solid season in terms of contributions to this Lions team, would get himself a hat trick in sacks on defense, along with the incumbent, in giving Aiden Hutchinson pressure that was committed in this game. When it came down to it, Aiden Hutchinson creeped right in that backfield again, and promptly, DJ Reed Jr. would have enough of getting beaten by these wide receivers. He bottled up Flournoy, got his hand on the football, tipped it up a little bit, and it took some work for him to get it down, but he caught that motherfucker for the game-sealing interception, essentially. Though by that point, the Lions already had the 44-30 advantage against them, and that would end the game. As for the numbers, the Lions, Jared Goff had 309 passing yards and a touchdown on 73.5% completion. The Lions would typically try to run the ball more. To see them with just 109 total as a team is a bit unorthodox for their kind of system, right? But they were still efficient. Damn near 5 yards a pop on the nose and 4 total touchdowns, with Jahmyr Gibbs again accounting for 3. Jahmyr Gibbs would have an overall day with 120 scrimmage yards on 19 carries, touches as well. Jamison Williams had 7 receptions for 96 yards, and Amon-Ra St. Brown had 6 receptions for 92 yards, while Jack Campbell had 12 tackles and a sack, along with the TFL. Unfortunately for this Lions team, though, quick note, Brian Branch is now out for the rest of the season with, man, it just sucks. Because they still have guys that got to return. They still don't have Malcolm Rodriguez back to this point. But they've been doing all right. And at the worst possible time, you lose that caliber of player in Brian Branch to a leg injury. If I'm not mistaken, I want to make sure I get this right. I believe they said it was an Achilles, but I could be wrong. Yes, torn Achilles. It's incredibly unfortunate, man. And you hope that he is all the rest he needs to fully recover from something like that. In the short term, though, it does definitely suck for them. Another bright spot, though, weirdly, like Tom Kennedy would, just at multiple points, he single-handedly set them up on pretty good possessions in terms of field position. Single-handedly. Like, to go from just a person, a random player who hadn't contributed much since 2022 to now becoming a little bit of a return specialist for them, it's crazy. And I'm sure that would change when Khalif Raymond would come back. But again, he's not playing. Fair enough. As for the Cowboys, Dak Prescott contributed 376 passing yards, along with a touchdown and 2 interceptions in this game on 66% completion. Jamison Williams had 67 rushing yards and a touchdown on 17 carries. CeeDee Lamb, when he was in, he didn't even play the full game. As I mentioned, he was out with a concussion. 6 receptions for 121 yards. Cooking. Flournoy as well, in relief, in a way. 9 receptions and 115 yards for him and a touchdown. While Jake Ferguson also contributed 5 receptions for 58 yards. With George Pickens, even in situations where he was positioned to get the ball, like Prescott launched up a deep shot that looked promising to George Pickens before the 2-minute warning, and it just completely missed. It looked like it was near him to where he could dive out and go get it, and it just doesn't happen. And you take into account all the stuff between the lack of intensity on the field, even when he wasn't getting the ball, between the lackluster effort when he was making catches, that Richard Sherman promptly called his ass out. And while a lot of what he said was fair, George Pickens tried to take some of his own shots, which ended up backfiring tremendously. And now we are here, and I think they're still engaging in this thing. It just doesn't really look that great for George Pickens at the end of the day. And that's what it does always come back to for him. Like, he's definitely got the talent. I don't think anybody can deny that. But even a Steelers fan at some point said, like, hey, this is exactly why we got rid of him. You know how crazy that is? Like, they know you have all the talent in the world, but there are times where you just prove to be too much of a headache to the team, and they just let you go simply because of that. Simply because they don't want to put up with it. Like, that nature has got to change. It's got to. Because you can say that, if he doesn't get that figured out, then it's like you're really just getting in your own way as a player. You truly have the potential to be great. And this is a prove-it deal, mind you. A 1-year spot with this Cowboys team. You've definitely far exceeded that. And they may very well be considering retaining your services. You just don't want to mess that chance up because of silly things. You just don't. But, moving on now into the Sunday action. And starting out with the Seahawks and the Falcons. And I'm going to keep it short. You have to credit the Falcons for keeping it close by, one, trying their absolute hardest to limit Jackson Smith and Jigba early and often in the first half, and also forcing takeaways. Like, yet another unexplainable stretch with just, I guess, underwhelming offensive play. And while this pass was deflected, Mike Hughes still has to go out there and make the play, and that was done. They sustained a few drives, enough to put some pressure on the Seahawks unit. But again, field goals aren't going to cut it the whole time. They just aren't. At least Kyle Pitts can also say as well that he was getting fed the football. But the Seahawks were still able to survive for the most part in the first half. Even with an early 3-and-out, they managed to get themselves multiple field goal possessions and also stole a scoring opportunity away from the Falcons with Nick Emmanwori blocking the field goal on what would be a tremendous day for him. I mean, I can talk about that. Between him doing that, getting his first career interception, and logging a sack, he is a fucking unit, dude. 2 pass deflections as well, and 7 tackles in this game. But even with all that being said, this was still a tie ball game at halftime. And something would have to drastically shift in order to make this game what it was. Shit you not, even without watching this game live. The very first play, period, Rashid Shaheed houses it for the longest play in the NFL this season with a 100-yard kickoff return touchdown, which would help him earn NFC Special Teams Player of the Week honors. And from there, it was truly all Seahawks. Like, I don't need to do all that. The game speaks for itself. DeMarcus Lawrence, man, let me tell you something, bro. He is also a player that's just like, oh my goodness, man. Yes, he is a little bit on the older side. But, he has come to this Seahawks team, and he has truly made an impact in damn near every single game that he's played in. Like, this is yet another game for him. He forces a turnover, and Devin Witherspoon ended up recovering the fumble there. The offense, from that point, started to pick it up as well. He got multiple touchdown drives, ending in Jackson Smith and Jigba touchdowns, including multiple 20-plus yard gains down the field. Literally had Jackson Smith and Jigba on one of them, just streaking to the end zone untouched. I don't know why the Falcons defense didn't want to tackle him. That's not my problem. That's not my problem. And then, while you had the Falcons push it to 2 scores as they tried to work their way back into it, ultimately it would be a wrap. Devin Witherspoon would also log an interception in this game. And after that second Jackson Smith and Jigba touchdown, the score would be pushed up to 37-9, and that score would stand to end the ball game. This is the second straight year that the Seahawks have just completely dogged this Falcons team. Second straight year. Granted, similar situation where you are dealing with the Falcons missing a few pieces here. And while the Falcons at this stage of the season, compared to last year, might not be as good. They still had enough talent out there to make this somewhat competitive, I would say. And that just did not happen. They completely allowed themselves to get outworked in the second half. 31-3 deficit at that point. Craziness. For the numbers, Sam Darnold in this game had 249 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception on 66.7% completion. Also, even if it's not with a lot of volume right now, the Seahawks have been consistently trying to balance it out. And I would think that they are starting to find their footing in the rushing attack just a little bit. 26 carries and 129 yards doesn't seem all that great, but for a team that had consistently been on the lower end in terms of yards per carry throughout the season, they averaged 5 total yards per carry in this one. So that's a promising sign. Weirdly enough, in garbage time, they had Velus Jones Jr. get in for a few runs. In this climate. Craziness, man. Jackson Smith-Njigba had 7 receptions for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns to continue a season in which he is just going crazy. In fact, he is the most prolific Seahawks wide receiver through their first 3 seasons on a different post from the team themselves that I saw. And he's matched a lot of those numbers in far less time. 89 receptions and 1,428 yards on the year with 9 touchdowns. There is not a shadow of doubt that he is going to earn himself a Pro Bowl nod. And I've already put in 1 ballot. I've been trying to consistently vote. I don't know why I've slacked on it. But after this, I'm probably going to get right back into doing it. Because we are fueling that. He is a Pro Bowl receiver. You can't question that. You just can't. Rashid Shaheed would have 4 receptions for 67 yards. And Cooper Kupp would get himself 2 receptions for 35 yards and a touchdown as well. Whole defense 8 men. Ernest Jones, the 4th, led with 11 tackles and 5 solo. Tariq Woolen had 2 pass deflections. Drake Thomas has also found himself in an interesting position. He had been a special teamer on this unit in years past. It didn't even occur to me that he emerged as a starter for them this season. And it seems like he's completely taken that role and run with it. You also have to credit what Ty Akata is doing out there. Julian Love is still out for all this time. There's no timetable for his return yet as he's on IR. But in a lot of the games that he's played in relief, he's put together a solid effort on his front too. Without question, man. So, hey, that is some all-around respect right there. And as for the Falcons, Kirk Cousins had 162 passing yards and 2 interceptions. 150% completion. Bijan Robinson had a total of 22 touches and 94 yards. Note, the Seahawks have not given up a 100-yard rusher in ages. And that would continue here. Bijan Robinson is definitely capable of doing it, and the Falcons probably would have needed it to keep it that competitive. And while he had a solid enough day, the Falcons, with the situation that they're in, they would have needed him to go ultra mega beast mode. And they just couldn't get that out of him. And once that was the case, nothing else really managed for them. While Kyle Pitts Sr. would get fed, with him getting 6 receptions for 90 yards, where are the other weapons at? Yes, Drake London is still out, and to just say this now, he will miss the Bucs game tomorrow with a knee injury. So that doesn't help you. But outside of that, your weapons in wide receiver, your next leading wide receiver was Algier out of the backfield. Then you had Denchario Drummond with 21 receiving yards. Darnell Mooney with just a single catch on 4 targets. Devin Tompkins with a single catch for 4 yards. Yep. And then David Sills the fourth with just 4 targets, and he didn't come up with anything. So at that point, what are the Falcons really to do? I'm not all that sure. It's just been that kind of season for them as well. And I don't really know how it gets any better. But if they can take solace in anything, it's that, with Kirk Cousins being in the game, and, yes, Drake London was a huge component of last year's one. You still remember that the first matchup went to overtime in a scorcher. And the Falcons did win that game with Kadero Hodge getting the game-winning score. So I'd say, hey, there's still a promise for them in a way, but it's not looking pretty right now. I gotta admit that. Moving on to the Steelers and the Ravens, and AFC North rivalry, of course, would already see a war of attrition be played. Literally, within just the first few plays, you had the defensive tackle for the Steelers, Keanu Benton, go out with an injury. Already. That's crazy. But the Steelers would still manage. You had them, despite giving up a deep play to Zay Flowers early. TJ Watt would get a nice stuff on Derrick Henry. And Brandon Echols, of all people, would lock up Zay Flowers on the ensuing third down to force the Ravens to kick a field goal here. And then, this Steelers team, and you can also kind of get at the Ravens defense here, and I will. I definitely will. For a team that, coming into this game, had just 8 20-yard completions, which was the fewest in the NFL at the time, and who also went the entire month of November by a different metric that they showed on screen in the game without completing a single one. It was that atrocious for them offensively. First play of the game, they hit DK up right down the field for a 52-yard gain without hesitation. And they promptly get into Ravens territory immediately. While they do lock up DK Metcalf on the fade with Marlon Humphrey getting a good knockout, ultimately they have Connor Hayward pick up the 4th down. And then, on a play-action play, they allow the now 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers to get out of space and score a touchdown. For his first rushing touchdown since 2021. Crazy. And I would have to think that, honestly, the celebration that he did, you might have had to take it back then to the touchdown that he had against the Bears around that time. That was probably the very last time he got in the end zone. They let him recapture that. That shit is crazy. But hey, the Ravens, as long as they get a feel for what they're doing, they should be fine. And yet, the way the Steelers are constantly, it's a rivalry game, fair enough. But it just seems like the Ravens at times, especially against the Steelers, just get out of their element completely. And then also you have situations where it just gets all bad for them. Now, they went back-to-back possessions with a punt, and while they would force a 3-and-out on the Steelers themselves, so that's a good turnaround, the most revealing thing about this, and to other people, I've already watched the video at this point, but even watching the game live, man, I can see why this man Daniel Faalele gets the hate. Especially when it comes to this play right here. He was a consistent football terrorist, if we want to use that term. We have basketball terrorist terminology. I think we can call Daniel Faalele a football terrorist. Especially when you take what I saw into account. Because on one of these plays, you have a manageable third down on their side of the field, and he's got Brandon Eccles right in front of him, okay? Right in front of him, apparently trying to pursue Lamar Jackson. And instead of doing his job, he allows Brandon Eccles, who stands at 5'10", and is 179 pounds, as I'm seeing. He allows that man to get right past him and sack Lamar Jackson. Matter of fact, he just completely ignores him. And again, even if you don't know what his intent is, your job is to protect the damn quarterback. So you got to fucking protect the quarterback. You got to do your job. It's as simple as that. Like, just think about this. I'm saying this the whole time because this man, Faalele, stands at 6'8", 370. So we're talking about a damn near 200-pound difference. I'm saying this repeatedly. If you see a guy like that in your vicinity, even if it might bang up Brandon Eccles a little bit, flatten the nigga. Flatten him. There's no reason why a person that small should be creeping their way into the backfield to break the pocket up completely. Especially when you actively see the man trying to get back there and disrupt, and you don't engage. How is that? You're literally just standing to the side like this as he runs past you. Of course, he's going to have the speed advantage. But as soon as you get a body on him, you're going to pummel him into the dirt. And you know this, and you don't do anything? Like, oh man, again, there were plays from him that were far more egregious. It was a constant display of just absolute trash play on the offensive line. And I thought that at times the damn Seahawks had it bad with Abraham Lucas in pass protection. And I guess the popular thing for some of the Hawks brass now is to just go after Anthony Bradford. At least Anthony Bradford can say that he doesn't have as much experience as Daniel Faalele does at this point. And is a little less physical overall. Like, Faalele has all the tangible advantages on Bradford, to be completely honest with you. I mean, he's 4 inches taller than him, and he's 35 pounds heavier, and he still can't guard up a fucking lip. I can see it now. Like, oh man, I get it, and it is not a promising sight. But that is just one part of the coin for what has just consistently been a Ravens team, at least this season. Man, their calling card, their entire makeup is that they aren't consistent. And even when they try to make progress, it's always something. It is always something. Like, even defensively, they still allow multiple chunk plays down the field. We have them on a 3rd and short inside their own territory, and they still let DK Metcalf break down the field pretty much uncovered. Wiggins doesn't have positioning, and at that point, you ain't winning that matchup with physicality on DK Metcalf. You're just not. You just aren't. They managed to get as close as possible in a go-to-goal situation, but were forced to kick a field goal. Fine. The Ravens offense could get it back, but they don't. even though you may not post all the blame on the quarterback here, his interception here would be a lurk on a pretty just softball pass to his cousin. James Pierre would definitely have a field day with that one and probably tell everybody all about it. And inevitably, that would lead to them managing to get passes to both Ben Skowronek and Thielen before having Kenneth Gainwell just run into the end zone untouched. And the Steelers would go up 17-3 there. At least the Ravens had a response for them. And even then, that was an issue. Like, it was great to see Lamar Jackson actually utilize the legs. And that'll be relevant for a different team later on. But you can say that there's been a drop-off for the Ravens in that attack because of their just propensity to try to, I don't know. It's just something weird. As I said, I think they got so caught up in trying to prove the point that Lamar Jackson is a good passer from the pocket. And they just completely lost all sense of even thinking about utilizing his dual threat ability. And I just don't know why they would go away from that, because that opens up your offense even more. But as they scored the touchdown, I guess they were willing to incorporate a little more. And even then, even with that, Tyler Luke missed the PAT. So it would be a one-possession ball game, but now they were down by 8 points. And they might have had to do a little bit of extra work just to make this feasible again. Without fail, you don't have any pressure getting over Aaron Rodgers' way. He scrambles out to the left and manages to get DK Metcalf on a long developing but effective enough end breaker. And he gets enough extra yardage to get 41 yards down the field. And then, as they break closer in goal-to-goal territory, you finally get some resistance from the Ravens defense with Kyle Van Noy doing what Kyle Van Noy does. Chris Boswell would be forced to get the field goal. And, that wasn't too bad at that point. Plus, the way the Ravens came out, they were definitely in the fight. They couldn't argue that anymore. Once they got Keaton Mitchell in, he immediately broke off a 55-yard run. This is a player you could say is Davon Achane-esque and probably would be nearly the same caliber of player if he got the opportunities. I would have to imagine with the way that he's put in sparsely at times as a change of pace guy, he's got to have one of the highest yards per carry averages ever. Even if he doesn't really get the carries to show it. And, that did enough to catch the Steelers off guard. It got the Ravens down the field, and eventually you would have Isaiah Likely. That'll be important in a second. He'd get himself a touchdown. Untouched, unfazed, unaffected in the end zone. Right? One possession ball game. All you got to do if you're the Ravens is get a quality stop. Get a quality stop. Finally, get some attention over there to get Aaron Rodgers and that entire offense out of rhythm, right? Let me tell you something right now. Because the fact that they allow Calvin Austin III to get down the field on essentially an empty formation, Chidobe Awuzie's pressing him, and Calvin Austin III is definitely going to have the advantage in the speed. It was a great throw. Maybe there's not much you can do about that. But you willingly, as a Ravens defense, decided that after constantly seeing this fail throughout the entire year, you took it upon yourselves to trust Mike Green in pass coverage. And with the way that the play was set up, he was supposed to be the matchup on Jalen Warren. And he was nowhere to be found as Jalen Warren got an easy 38-yard touchdown pass off the screen to push that right back up into a 2-possession lead for the Steelers. Nowhere to be found. And at that moment, I'm literally saying, yo, you gotta stop. Mike Green, coming into the NFL, legitimately was what he was in terms of being a purebred pass rusher. If you never saw him develop as a pass coverage guy at Marshall, never. Maybe you work at it in practice, fine, but you shouldn't be consistently throughout the year trying to rely on him as a pass coverage guy. And damn near every single time that a Ravens game has been on and I've seen him out in pass coverage, it does not work. They test him. They throw right at him. And it works every single time. It ends in a good enough game for them to justify the play call. And you get the worst possible outcome if you're the Ravens defense, giving up a full-blown touchdown. So come on, at some point, what the hell do you need to see from him? It's crazy. And at that point, if you're going to have your defense consistently treat you like that, at some point, as an offense, you had to just take it upon yourself to take full control of this, even if it had been difficult throughout the game. And the fourth quarter would just be marked by that pursuit for the Ravens. I mean, they'd get their fair share of opportunities to drive down the field and make a true dent in the score, but they could not convert. Whether it was one thing or the other, between the amount of drops alone, especially this Rashad Bateman one. You have that. You have relentless pressure derailing a few opportunities for them to score here, even on a great play from Zay Flowers to get down the field on the first play of this possession. And they still could not get a touchdown out of it. Then things truly hit ahead. Yes, this play and its overturned status would be tough, especially after they just got a bit of momentum back with having Zay Flowers streak down the field for a 33-yard gain. Got a little slide tackle in and everything like that, trying his hardest to extend the play, and it worked just enough. Isaiah likely did drop the pass. He did. Fair enough logic that they had for it. If it's the same in play, it's got to be the same in the end zone. He got the first 2 feet down. He did. He had control. And I'm shocked that Joey Porter Jr. actually hung in here and made the play without getting penalized. But he knocked it out right before he makes this third step or football move. Still, they got Derrick Henry out of the backfield on the following play and damn near got the first down. And on third and short, you give another predictable play to Derrick Henry that results in lost yardage. And at that point, you could take a field goal at that point, but you recognize that as the game is winding down, this is near the 2-minute warning now, you need to go for something. And you fail to hit up Mark Andrews here. Another wasted opportunity. But they would get an immediate stop. In fact, they get it before not before the 2-minute warning, but they would manage to, at the very least, have their last timeout in their pocket. what the hell is this offensive line? Because it starts and ends with that. Not just throughout the entirety of this game, from the offensive perspective, but on this drive alone, literally. One of their guys gets penalized for a holding, and they already start off behind the 8 ball. Already. It takes them more than a minute to work out of that, and before they can even go for it on the 4th and short, they gotta call their final timeout. They were already fucked right when that happened. Because you still are on your own side of the field, and you got to go on a massive drive down the field just to score a touchdown. You can't settle for a field goal at this point, especially. And while they do try to get some effort in, like every second matters. They've got to run with urgency. And still, when we get to them having just 9 seconds left in the game, they're still on Pittsburgh's 30-yard line. Maybe another short play might have helped here. Maybe you could take a shot right then, right there. A lot of things are going to be running through your mind at that point as a team. But once Alex Highsmith, with, again, none of these offensive linemen accounting for him, even if Lamar Jackson's outside of the pocket, nobody's paying attention to him at all. He breaks that blocking effort or whatever there might have been there and just sacks Lamar Jackson in the most anticlimactic manner for the Ravens fans to end the game with the Steelers getting the 27-22 win. Just an abject disaster on that front. All around. No matter how you slice it, and they still had a chance. They still had a chance. Like, one thing we know about the Steelers this season, getting into the numbers now, they can't run the football. And when you look at this advantage for them, a rivalry that has constantly been marked by the advantage on the ground. The Ravens, after struggling for all this time, managed to put up 217 yards on the ground as a team on 5.4 yards per carry and held the Steelers to just 34 yards on 2 yards to carry and did not win. Think about that for a second. But the way to compound on that inability to run the football is to get the proper pressure, and yet you still got beaten on play action passes that Aaron Rodgers would very much like to run time and time again. In this game, he had 284 passing yards and 2 total touchdowns on 67.6% completion, while also, for the first time since 2020, or at least the most instances since 2020, having 4 different passes result in 30-plus yard gains down the field. That's your defense that gave that up on the back end. And that is unacceptable for a Ravens defense to give that up on the back end. I mean, I'll get to it in a second. DK Metcalf, though, went fucking stupid, man. 7 receptions for 48 yards for him. Jalen Warren had 3 receptions for 49 yards out of the backfield and the aforementioned touchdown score. And then Calvin Austin had the long 31-yard catch. Kenneth Gainwell also added 6 receptions for 27 yards. But seriously, just think about this. The 25th anniversary of the 2000 team was taking place. Yeah, that team that won the Super Bowl with that suffocating defense. And that is how you come out as an overall Ravens team and embarrass the living shit out of those legends. I'm not even a fan of the Ravens, and I can admit that shit is a fucking embarrassment. You have Ray Lewis there in the flesh with a number of other guys trying to just honor their time on the field. and honor a special moment in history. I mean, that happened just a few years after the Ravens reestablished themselves as an organization after the Browns moved to Baltimore. That iteration of the Browns moved to Baltimore. Truly a historical moment. And you crap all over the fucking place. You don't give a damn. This is how you come out and play with that energy in the building. It's embarrassing. Truly. But it has been tough for the Ravens all throughout. Lamar Jackson had 219 passing yards and a touchdown, along with an interception on 54.3% completion. Zay Flowers, at least, had 8 receptions for 124 yards. And Isaiah Likely had 4 receptions for 25 yards and a touchdown. Maybe one of those missed opportunities and one of those missed touchdowns could have ended up being all the difference here, but for the Ravens, it just went much further than that. You can't harp on that alone. It is definitely a microcosm of how things have gone, but that was not the sole reason they lost this game. Like, it truly came down to a number of other different factors that they needed to clean up personally on their front and just refused to do so consistently enough. Craziness, man. All right. Moving on to okay, so yeah. All right. As I literally asked myself, and this is the perfect question. This is a perfect question. What the fuck is going on with the teams in the DMV? What the fuck is happening? What was this game from the Commanders? What was this? What was this? What was this? I need answers, because just to get into it with the last stat, going through a play-by-play understanding of this isn't going to tell you the full story. But what you have to understand is that the Vikings became the first team since the 1992 Broncos to shut out an opponent after being shut out the week before. And they also got their largest shutout in 45 years. In a game where they had J.J. McCarthy return and actually play like he was fucking Drake May this season. In this damn game alone. What was this? Again, neither of these teams have anything to play for. And while we know that the Vikings defense is that good, like you can't make it up. They come out on the first drive, the Commanders defense, and they allow Josh Oliver to walk into the end zone untouched to break a 23 consecutive possession mark without a score, their longest in their franchise since 2006. And it was just like that the entire game. I mean, literally, like, some of these scores just make no sense without me even watching the drive in entirety as I was preparing for other things. You had them go on a 12-minute possession, working 98 yards down the field, not even getting that many explosive plays, dominating the time of possession, and ultimately having Jordan Mason punch it into the end zone with the power back that he's become for a touchdown. Even though they got some solid runs from guys like Chris Rodriguez Jr. and the like, that still wasn't consistent enough to even get into scoring position consistently. And then, this shit. Now, no, I didn't see the Marcus Mariota interception, but this shit right here, alone in the second half, even with this still being feasible, is what did it in for the Commanders, and is exactly what the theme of their season has been, what the theme of the entire offseason has been. The mismanagement that they have had in terms of accounting for different players on and off the field, and their ability to keep them properly conditioned has been a shit show. It has been an abject failure in that regard. And it would get even worse for them. Like, think about this. You have Jaden Daniels already coming back from injury in this game. And on the first possession, he's sprawling in pain already. Then you get a case here where Andrew Van Ginkel, who just eats off of deflected passes from the edge, managed to get an interception on Jaden Daniels on what was intended to be a screenplay. And he gets pushed down by a different player. And he doesn't get up. He doesn't get up, move at all, and they have to take him off the field. And now he's out with injury again. And to make matters even worse, after holding them to a field goal and after the aforementioned pick, then they allow another touchdown to Josh Oliver just because, this time in short range. Because, of course. Like, the Vikings could beat you any way they pleased in this game. They could have that 12-minute drive, or they could capitalize off of short possessions. But nothing, and I mean nothing, it's not a comparison. But you cannot, as a fan of the Commanders team, live with what happened next and forgive that. Because if you go and even take a second to look at the scouting report, you know that you are going to have to watch out for hard hits from Josh Metellus on the back end. And obviously Harrison Smith is still there. So tell me why Marcus Mariota throws a high ball to Zach Ertz, expecting him at his age to get all the way up in the air and go grab it. And Metellus, on a play that you do not want to watch again, if you watched it live, he hits him low. And Zach Ertz's leg buckles out of place midair. And instantly, he's taken out of the ball game. He's now ruled out for the season with an ACL tear. At his age, at a time in his career where he had actually been turning it around and becoming a key piece to that roster. You know how good of a season he had last year, and he'd still been keeping it together. The man is 35 years old, potentially on the last leg of his career, still trying to make an impact, and you put him in that position? You would hope that it's not the last season of his career, as he potentially contemplates retirement. And even then, he might not have a choice because of that kind of overall culture around the organization, where you just get yourself that dilapidated, that you are making all of these questionable decisions in a year where you were trying to build something substantial for the long term for this organization. They were literally in playoff contention last year, and now they're down multiple core guys with a 3-10 record after getting blown out and shut out by 31 points. Like, at that point, if you're going to continue to put your players at risk like that, why even bother keeping your core guys in at this point? Why even bother having Terry McLaurin come back in and play off of injury? Even if he led the team in receiving yards, it don't even matter at that point. Bobby Wagner had 16 tackles in this game and a sack. It don't even matter at this point. Jaden Daniels, I don't even care about him having this performance by his standards being bad. 78 yards on 45% completion in an interception is not good. I'm not going to act like it is. But, of course, at this stage of the season, with him already dealing with multiple injuries this year, and him potentially not even being at 100%, why are you even bringing him back? Why? Just let him rest for the season. It's not worth it. It's not. And that, above all else, is a red flag on the Commanders here. The best thing you can do in a situation like this is protect your assets. And you are failing to do that. In the worst way. The worst way. I don't know how much it does for the Vikings, but it's definitely a good day for them at the office. They'll certainly take it. Goodness gracious, man. And then, man, we're going to have a lot of melt sessions here. Oh, boy. Just like it's always something for the Ravens, it is always something for the Bengals. Yes, that Bengals team. They had an opportunity to steal a game from the Bills at home when they've consistently been that good at home. They had a lead. They had this game pretty close and a slight advantage late in the game. Now, their defense had been slipping, and I'll get to that fucking defense. But even then, the Bengals are in yet another situation where they have a chance to put a team away, even in what is a competitive matchup. They'd been getting the better of Buffalo all day long. And yet, in Buffalo territory, you have Joe Burrow throw an absolute duck. To Christian Benford for what would be a 67-yard interception return for touchdown. Instantly. And that would happen just before they switched over to this being a bonus coverage game. The very next play from scrimmage sees one of their tackles for the Bills and Phillips deflect a Joe Burrow pass, ending up in another interception on back-to-back plays caught by A.J. Epinesa. And when they went through that streak of consistently losing 30-plus point ball games that they had that output in, some of those games were definitely marked by late-game lapses from this offense, even if the overall game tells a completely different story. And I don't think that aspect of it gets talked about enough. We're going to be laser focused on the defense because at the end of the day, they got a job to do. But, you can't possibly put yourself in a scenario where you throw back-to-back interceptions and expect to come out unscathed. And promptly, not only did they give up the pick six, but they also had the Bills in no time get Dawson Knox down the field for a 31-yard gain because Dalton Kincaid was still out. And Dawson Knox is getting fed. They would also get Jackson Hawes in for a 3-yard touchdown on 4th down. And it's like at that point, the Bengals, they're trying to hold as a defense. But if you're going to give up that kind of short field to Buffalo, like what do you expect them to do? Thankfully for them, they would lead a pretty good 2-minute drill. In fact, it took them just 50 seconds to get down the field, showing you how explosive they are as an offense. You have Mike Gesicki get a one-hand snag over the middle to push the ball down the field originally, and then T. Higgins was just playing around with his foot all day long. You got an earlier touchdown catch, just mossing the hell out of Maxwell Hairston, and would do the same thing, getting another one-handed grab in the end zone, mossing the hell out of Tre'Davious White for a 25-yard score. So, okay, the Bengals still had a chance, even though they missed a 2-point conversion, which would have had them be in a spot where if they got the ball back, they would have just had to go and get a field goal. Maybe not all that bad. Nevertheless, even with missing it, you got to get a stop, or that's all for naught at that point. And what does that Bengals defense do? Yeah, Geno Stone would manage to get a sack on Josh Allen. A whole team surrounded him. Perfect coverage. But when it mattered the most, they just completely ignore him. No, seriously. One of the other touchdowns that the Bills had scored before, that I watched him post, saw Josh Allen scramble free for 40 yards down the field. And what did the Bengals fail to do on that play? They didn't have any attention on him. They didn't put a single spy on him. And I shit you not, on this 3rd and long, knowing that he's going to be a threat in the same way that some of the other quarterbacks in the upper echelon would be, to run the football on a breakdown. They allow the breakdown. They don't put a spy on him at all. And he runs for a 17-yard gain to end the damn game. And this Bengals team expected to run the table? Like, think about how twisted this is. You limit a Ravens team with a quarterback that could be considered to be more dynamic as a runner than Josh Allen is. Allen favors physicality. You limit that offense, and you keep Lamar Jackson bottled up, but you don't put any sort of focus or attention at all on Josh Allen. What kind of fucking game plan is that? And you promptly paid for it, losing the game 39-34. As Josh Allen would have quite another day at the office with a total of 329 yards and 4 total touchdowns, 3 passing on 78.6% completion. James Cook III had 18 rushes for 80 yards in the game. Dawson Knox had 6 receptions for 93 yards. Oh, they did have Dalton Kincaid back. Well, hey, that's good. He had 4 receptions and 41 yards in a touchdown in that game. Okay, cool, awesome. I guess they didn't really utilize him a whole ton in that specific part of the game. But he definitely got fed. So, hey, look at the tight ends getting there. All around. That's nice to see. James Cook also had 2 receptions for 31 yards out of the backfield. As for the Bengals, Joe Burrow had 284 yards passing on 69.4% completion with 4 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. They still can't run the ball either, proving how one-dimensional they can be and how inconsistent it has been. I'm not going to act like Chase Brown hasn't been on a heater over the past few games. Like, he's picked it up in the latter half of the season when it comes to running the football. But he was limited to just 1.9 yards per carry in this game. He did manage to get in the end zone. But, again, against the Bills team that is implementing that kind of balance, you think you're going to last by simply being an air raid offense. I just don't know how you expect that. And then, again, to have to be in a spot to go toe-to-toe every single fucking game with the elite offenses out there and come out on top. Like, that shit can get annoying. Like, they still lead since 2023 the NFL in games lost when they score more than 30 points because you have defense allowing damn near 40 every fucking time without fail. It makes no sense. T. Higgins had 6 receptions and 92 yards in this game with 2 touchdowns. Mike Gesicki had 6 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown. And Jamar Chase had 5 receptions for 44 yards. It's fucking wild, man. And with that, the Bills will become the first team since 1970 with multiple fourth quarter comebacks of 10 or more points when trailing by that margin in the final 10. And ironically enough, who did it happen to? Multiple AFC North teams. The Ravens earlier in the year, a very first game, and now this shit. Somebody's got to win that division, though. Somebody's got to win that division. Also, interestingly enough, if you can believe this, even though all of these teams kind of run their offenses in different ways, with some of the games that I've just covered, the Lions, the Seahawks, and the Bills are all teams that are in at least the top 5, maybe top 3 of total points throughout this stretch of the year, if you can believe that. And even though it might not look it all the time, like that says a whole hell of a lot to me. I ain't gonna lie. Moving on to the Bears and the Packers, the traditional rivalry itself, but this is also a battle, at least for the moment, for the top of the division lead for the NFC North. The Packers would get a nice start overall, at least initially, in theory. They managed to get the Bears into a 3-and-out situation, and they consistently did that throughout this stretch of time. While also getting Jaden Reed back. They called him up off IR, and he was instantly getting a few good looks between a pair of runs, a few catches to convert some first downs. It was going solid for him. And then Montez Sweat decided to wreck the game. And then you had an inevitable head scratcher from Jordan Love pop up. I don't know what made him decide to throw that pass straight to C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Like, he literally just gifted to him. C.J. Gardner-Johnson's in the right spot. I don't really know what Jordan Love's intent was there, but that didn't end up going so I guess. Nevertheless, though, the most of the first quarter would see both defenses on full display. And it was looking promising for a second. Luke Musgrave had broken open for a 34-yard gain initially, but they ended up overturning that play because he did not get his hands under the football in time before it hit the ground. Ultimately, the Packers would be forced to punt there, and the Bears were kind of in a weird spot themselves. Let's just put it like this. They did try to do their best to initiate their run game. But for a point of time in this game, I think, like very early in the half even, Caleb Williams was something like 4 of 11 for 9 yards. It was not an accurate day for him at the office. But you got the full Caleb Williams experience in this one, as things would pick up later on. For the Packers, though, they'd get right back to work. You had Wild, the blocking tight end from Tennessee, managed to get down the field for a 21-yard gain, and then Christian Watson with the burners, because you just have to take advantage of that speed. And you see Jordan Love off platform, off 1 foot, throw a heave down the field to Christian Watson. He goes and gets it. Like, as good as C.J. Gardner-Johnson had been playing to that point, he even got a good run stuff on Josh Jacobs on the drive, but he don't have that kind of world-class speed that Christian Watson possesses. He just doesn't. Not at all. Hey, I mean, for the Bears, they would turn it right around themselves. Luther Burden III would get himself a nice conversion here. And Kyle Manungai would also manage to work them down the field with a few solid runs, but eventually they would be forced to settle for a field goal. At least you're on the board at that point if you're the Bears. However, what they could not allow is to get beaten over the top completely. And finally, you're thinking, if you're a Packers fan, Bo Melton on a post route would catch a beauty from Jordan Love to finally get a touchdown as a wide receiver. You know, they'd been playing around with him being a cornerback for a while. It hasn't been all that successful. So now they've kind of put him in a situation where he's just going to be more of a gadget player. At least they can say it finally panned out for him this time. And that would give the Packers a 2-possession lead. It almost got disastrous for the Bears as their special teamer in Josh Blackwell almost fumbled initially. Still, though, they wouldn't be able to really break out of their own territory in this drive and would be forced to punt, essentially ending off the half. But like I said, in the third quarter for the team as a whole, and when you look at Caleb Williams, you saw some good things on display from him. Truly. Caleb Williams just got out in space a ton. And granted, when you have to deal with Rashawn Gary, Kingsley Enagbare was also a player that made his mark on this game. And Micah Parsons, of course. The entire time, you're going to want to haul ass. But it's like Caleb Williams, you saw this kind of same stuff from him at USC. Where he just starts to get into this hero ball situation, breaking out of the pocket, making all of these video game style moves, and just somehow making something out of nothing down the field. Did that all the time at USC, and those kinds of plays got him a Heisman Trophy. So it's not like, you know what I'm saying, it's all bad there. But essentially, last year, relying on that so much cost them. They've tried to phase that out, at least in important moments of the game. They still want him to go out and do that, but they want him to become a more sound player overall. Still, when he needed to, he showed you that, hey, he can make these kinds of plays often. Like, literally just hits Cole Kmet down on a tough-ass read outside of the pocket. Just scrambling and dealing with other arm angles out in space. And the touchdown catch that would be caught by Zacchaeus even sees him thread the needle outside of the pocket. On a day where, again, he'd been mostly inaccurate, he gets the cleanest pass over to Zacchaeus. And it actually gets in a Packers player's possession before Zacchaeus muscles it over and catches it. Plus, they got the 2-point conversion to make this a field goal game. Those kinds of plays right there kept the Bears in it and gave them life. But just as soon as they had it, a Christian Watson scorcher down the field from 41 yards out would take it away. They had no help. They had no help over the top. And you just got this deeper crossing play over to him. Nobody else is there to account for just how fast he truly is. And he just walked right into the end zone. Completely. So I was like, that's a little bit unfortunate. Nevertheless, as Luther Burden III would push them deeper into Green Bay territory, while it wouldn't prove to be eventful for them once they got there, they did at least manage to get another field goal on the board. So this was a touchdown game at this point. And after forcing a 3-and-out themselves, with Booker holding Brooks to a very short gain of the sticks, the Bears would get the ball back and carve out a solid drive. They tried to establish a little bit of balance here, and they ripped off 8 minutes and 32 seconds off the clock to eventually get Colston Loveland in the end zone from 1 yard out and tie up the ball game. You'd taken a nice chunk of time out of this, and it put the Packers on the instant defensive, but they would run in a similar way. They were in no rush to get down the field. And when you have a guy in Josh Jacobs who, no matter what else would happen here, when you know that you can pencil him in for a touchdown in the red zone damn near every time, it's what makes him one of the most reliable running backs in that area of the field. I kid you not, man. It would be cool, yes, to see him break out in space on a 3rd and short and almost truck over Kevin Byard III completely for a 21-yard gain. But, that compact frame and strength that he possesses within it just keeps everyone else at a disadvantage. Nick McCloud got some hands on him on what would be a 2-yard touchdown run for him, and it still wasn't enough to bring Josh Jacobs down at all. He still had enough strength to muscle right through it and get the ball right over the goal line. It is just a cheat code for them. And it helped the Packers go up. But the Bears were not done slinging and fighting. I mean, seriously, you got multiple plays here with Caleb Williams just taking it upon himself to fucking ball out. I mean, you had him get a dime right over on Isaiah McDuffie trying to deflect the ball up high, and Luther Burden III would get that for 27 yards. Then you had him roll out of the pocket yet again. Whatever you want to call his running style, it could be considered unorthodox, fine. He did that shit. Rolls right near the sideline and fucking slings the ball on a damn near sidearm trajectory over to Devin Duvernay for a 24-yard gain. They're rolling. The 2-minute warnings kicked in, and the Packers have multiple timeouts at this point. I do understand the Bears' strategy once they got in there, though. They ran the hell out of the football, and they let a nice amount of time bleed down, too. I did understand it. I did. Could they have called a timeout a little sooner after Kyle Monunga was stuffed for no gain? Yes. But the way I see it, you'd been going toe-to-toe with the Packers the whole game, and you needed to find a way to keep them off the field if you could. You were in the red zone pretty much instantly on the very first play. So if you called the right plays, could honestly take your time. Drain out as much clock as possible to ensure that you had the last possession of the game. I don't have a problem with that. I don't. But the execution would be stymied by an Ibari getting the stuff aforementioned. And then on this 4th down, they did run the same play that essentially sealed up the Eagles game, with Cole Kmet getting over the top on this play action play. Over the top for that touchdown in that game against the Eagles. They did run the same thing. They thought they could catch the Packers off guard. And honestly, with the pressure incoming, if Caleb Williams has a more accurate pass, he probably does get Cole Kmet in a position where he can at least get some hands on the ball and go up for it. Instead, he softballs it. And Keyshawn Nixon, who doesn't have the size advantage on Cole Kmet at all, gets out in front of the ball and intercepts it for what would be the game. You do have to credit the Bears for keeping that competitive. But ultimately, the Packers win 28-21. Truly hard fought. Definitely one of the better games of the day. It was worth the 425 primetime slot, to say the least. As an NFL fan, you can't be disappointed by that at all. Jordan Love in this game, to get into some of the numbers, would have 234 yards passing on 68% completion with 3 touchdowns and an interception. Josh Jacobs had 20 rushes for 86 yards in the score. And Christian Watson had 4 receptions and 89 yards for 2 touchdowns. While Will Melton had a reception for 45 yards and a touchdown. Jaden Reed in his return also had a total of 6 touches and 53 yards. Man, it's so good for them to have him back, man. Truly, they missed him. Edgerrin Cooper is also just a fucking dog, by the way. 11 tackles. That is probably another guy that I would strongly consider for Pro Bowl in the NFC. And even, there are probably some cases where he might be an alternate. Maybe there are some other linebackers that people would consider. I don't know. I got to go through the process again, man. I put in one, but, you can put in multiple. So I got to get back to it. Caleb Williams had 186 passing yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception with 54.3% completion. As a team, the Bears had 138 rushing yards on 4.3 yards per carry, although they didn't get a single carry greater than 10 yards. As I'm seeing right here, Munungai's longest run, and the longest run for the team was just at 9 yards. That's pretty damn crazy. Again, not too many explosives, but consistent, effective play. All the Bears had to do at that point, it literally came down to the wire, and you just gotta throw a much better pass in that situation. I was initially thinking, okay, maybe Caleb Williams could have just ran this. Maybe they could have done a quarterback sneak even if they just didn't want to run it up the middle with Munungai. Maybe that would have been too predictable. But again, the angles in which all of these guys were coming from, I even think there was a spy on Caleb Williams there as well. He didn't have the angle to do that, honestly. So, I don't know. You just gotta have a better ball in that situation. Luther Burton, the third, had 4 receptions for 67 yards. Cole Kmet had 2 receptions for 42 yards, and Colson Loveland had 4 receptions for 29 yards and a touchdown. C.J. Gardner-Johnson had an interception, 10 tackles, and a pass deflection in this game as well. Truly a hard-fought one. And let's just say that these next 2 games, to start out with the Sunday Night Football action between the Texans and the Chiefs, would be even more competitive if you can approach it from that standpoint. You got 2 of the better defensive displays from any one team this week. But ultimately, somebody had to win it. You don't want to see ties, I guess. People were, all over with that after just dealing with one, even though they rarely happen. You don't want to get in that way. You want to see a victor, and you want to see someone lose out. Fair enough. So the Chiefs coming into this game were going to be at a disadvantage regardless. As, this is a Texans team coming into it who I think was still the top defense in the league in multiple metrics. And they had been down a number of key linemen. They already mentioned at an earlier point that Josh Simmons was going to be out with injury. And Trey Smith was already out. They had another individual already out with injury. To make matters even worse for them, Wanye Morris, one of their other linemen, would go out with an injury, and he is now in the same way to just talk about it right then, right there. He is now out for the rest of the season with a knee injury as well. Another horrible loss from them on that front. He's got to take the time that he can to rest up and recover on his end. But the Chiefs were going to go through it even more now. Luckily, while it looked as though things could get out of hand, the Chiefs were eventually able to turn it around. I mean, it did help that in one of the first plays for this team, you had Ashton Gelati get his hands on C.J. Stroud, the rookie, who had honestly not really been in the rotation all that much for a while. I mean, maybe he has been, but I haven't watched too many Chiefs games live. The rookie himself would manage to get in the backfield and sack C.J. Stroud, forcing a punt eventually. And while the Chiefs would get it back, they themselves would engage in a lot of the same misfortune. Granted, you are dealing with the Texans defense. You are dealing with a monster in Will Anderson Jr. And even if Danielle Hunter wasn't making as much of his impact, he had one of his lowest outputs in terms of pressures in his career. And did that matter? No, because you had other serviceable guys like Danico Autry getting his hands on Patrick Mahomes at different points in this ball game. You had the Ohio State man in Tommy Togiai making a few plays to stuff runners in the backfield and also get his hands on Patrick Mahomes. And literally, when we're talking about breathing room, it just didn't exist. It didn't exist in this game really that much for either squad. The Texans can say that they got away with that a few times. Nico Collins went right to work on this drive, right up against Trent McDuffie. They figured that was going to be the key matchup, and he burned him down the field. Mossed him completely. It would get a little scary for the Chiefs as Trent McDuffie would then step out of the game with an injury, and they then asked the rookie in Noel Williams from TCU to hold his own against Nico Collins. Credit to him, he would get a key tackle to force 4th and short, and with Ariante Ursary having an offensive offsides penalty, the Texans would be settling for a field goal there. Fair enough. It's just that Noel Williams wouldn't fare that well for too much more time in this game. As for this offense, man, the Chiefs, yeah, as I said, you have Togiai getting back here and wrecking the entire flow at that point. But then again, you can't even really say the Chiefs were in a flow offensively at all. It would get even worse for them as they allowed the Texans to drive 90 yards down the field. And even with Noel Williams getting an early breakup, you then had them constantly work their way down the field as C.J. Stroud would find Dalton Schultz down the field and then eventually hit up Nico Collins again for a 53-yard gain. And truly, at that point, I don't know what the hell happened. I can't even lie to you. I don't know what the fuck happened. But clearly, a number of different players on that end fucked up completely if you're going to give Nico Collins that kind of gain. Also, it was the Woody Marks show. With Nick Chubb going out with an injury of his own, the Texans had to single-handedly rely on him in multiple ways. And I mean, hey, when you have a guy in Nick Bolton who's typically good in pass coverage just completely denying any attention on him at all, they have Woody Marks streak out of the backfield, wide open, and promptly got in the end zone for a touchdown. It was looking a little bit better for the Texans, though, as man A. I mean, you have to give the credit, first of all, on this play to Lassiter in this occasion would get a pretty solid, I guess, no, it was Bullock who was also engaged on this. But essentially, he managed to clear Juju Smith-Schuster out of the way, while Jalen Petre, the dog himself, and people just still don't understand this for some reason. I don't understand it. Because do you know how difficult it is for you to be guarded up on Juju Smith-Schuster? He breaks up the route, locates the ball as he gets off of him, and gets his own pass deflection converted into an interception to give the Texans the ball back. You know how difficult that is? And he would just continue to put on a display as to why he is a fucking dog. I don't know how many times I gotta say it on a year-to-year basis. It's just not going to stop. Like, that is in his DNA. You really expect that shit to just stray away from him? No. No, not even close. Like, come on, man. Xavier Worthy for the Chiefs would still, after the Texans didn't convert on that opportunity, he'd push them down the field. And they also had a little more life as Tyquan Thornton would pick up another first down for him. But as soon as Danico Autry and Sheldon Rankins combined for this sack right here, the Chiefs would be forced to settle for a field goal. Only Harrison Butker, as reliable as he usually is, missed. And that would end the half. The Texans would actually try to move the ball a little bit, but with Chris Jones getting a sack on C.J. Stroud, and that even would signify a shift in how the Chiefs started to approach things there, that would end off the half. Spagnuolo's specialty as a defensive coordinator has always been the blitz. And the way that this game was going, it kind of reminds you how, I guess, both defenses were playing in each other in the wild card game that the Texans had against the Chiefs earlier in the year. Of course, for other reasons. In terms of having Tank Dell go out with that injury, you don't want to harken back to that. But what you do understand about that is, well, rather, yeah. What you do understand about that, at least, is that in that case, they pressured the living hell out of C.J. Stroud. And it got so bad in that game, if you remember, that he literally came out of that game towards the end of it, limping off of the field. Well, the Chiefs and Spagnuolo took it upon himself and themselves to get back into that back, because they had been letting C.J. Stroud get a little too comfortable for their liking. George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, the whole squad, Lael Chanel even, started getting in his ass. And the Texans, for a while, just sputtered completely. They couldn't do anything at all. Anything. Like, even in cases where he had open chances, like this drive, for example, Xavier Hutchinson was open, and the pressure was immediately getting emphasized to a point where he just completely missed out on it. That was unfortunate. The Chiefs would get an instant response after that. They had a shorter field to work with, and they took full advantage of it. They got a great start with Marquise Brown getting himself down the field for a 35-yard gain, and would ultimately get yet another 4th and short converted, this time for a Kareem Hunt touchdown, getting right through the teeth of the defense to make this a one-score game. You just got these defenses, again, all over, going back and forth with each other. The Chiefs would be the team in this stretch of time to get some progress down the field at least. But for the majority of it, you just got a load of different pressures from different key edge rushers on both sides. And ultimately, you did not have a team come away with anything here. But the Chiefs, to their credit, would take this drive, in which Patrick Mahomes does as Patrick Mahomes usually will, on the third down, even when you put a little bit of attention on him, he still managed to break through all of it and got himself a first down pickup. Then would have to take it upon himself for another short gain before ultimately having to settle for a field goal that at that point came near the end of the third quarter and tied it up. It was definitely ugly. But hey, the Chiefs had 10 unanswered points. They were holding the Texans in complete and total check. And they had some new life, especially when they forced the Chiefs into a 3-and-out themselves. But then, even in some of the cases where passes looked to be there for the Chiefs, the night was just marked by inaccuracy. Now, granted, on this play, right here, okay? This is where Jalen Petre makes his money. This is exactly where. Rashee Rice thought he had a clean catch underneath. Not on Jalen Petre's watch. It was a legal hit. But he popped the fuck out of Rashee Rice. And he dropped that ball. That hit was so damn powerful that even Creed Humphrey must have thought it was legal, or maybe just didn't like how Jalen Petre was popping his shit afterwards. Can you blame him after having a hit like that? No. He tried to press him and fight him. I'm like, no, that's a legal hit. It was clean. He didn't lead with his helmet at all. We're going shoulder first, straight into the body. And he lit him up. Just a fucking weapon, bro. And to make matters even worse, they got in 3rd and long after that. And Mahomes this pass was even weirder. Like, Marquise Brown was open, but you short arm it against a guy in Kamari Laster who is proven to be a pretty solid number 2 guy in complimentary corner to Derek Stingley Jr. And you tested him and he worked you. No bueno. But the Chiefs' defense had tightened up so well that Karlaftis would pretty much erase any opportunity for them to make a substantial drive out of this. And it would get even better for them as they would manage to, even despite Jaden Higgins getting the very first catch by any Texan in the second half. Yes, that is how well the Chiefs had been playing them, by the way. They were still forced to punt the football. You're on your own side of the field at that point, so you don't want to give the Chiefs a chance to get the upper hand on you if you don't have to. But the Chiefs would manage to do that for them. Everybody's questioning what they were doing on this 4th and short on their own territory, especially with the way that their defense had been playing as of late. Instead, it almost gets there. You have Rashee Rice get the ball near him, and he dropped it. He dropped it. And that promptly gave the Texans a short field to work with. It didn't take them too much time, but they took off a decent amount of time. before Woody Marks would step out with injury, and Dare Ogunbowale had himself a touchdown run to take the lead instantly. Same way for the Chiefs, where nothing could just go right for them. It was always something. Always something. Like, you got Rice in another situation where, well, I guess this is where the drop came in, right? But nevertheless, you go with him on back-to-back pass attempts and nothing is made of it. Though, again, one of the first ones here, I think Patrick Mahomes, again, got himself in multiple situations where he's feeling so much pressure that he just gets these jittery-ass throws in, man. I'm talking far short of the hands of these wide receivers, hitting them at the legs and everything. Like, it was that rough for him. And again, with no protection virtually to speak of, it's like, it's not really that hard to see. You know, you've had points in Mahomes' career where that's shown. I mean, you can always take it back to that Super Bowl against the Bucs, but even more than that, like, it does happen. Still, in a season that's been just going all bad for them, you'd want them to turn it around at some point, especially through the lens of their organization. And while they would manage to get a solid stop, forcing the 3-and-out on this team, this play was it. This play was it. Right here. Travis Kelce himself, as I said, he had literally been a non-factor all game long. And again, understandable. Given the potential decline in athleticism that he's facing at his age. That is a given, and we've seen that throughout the year. But still, there were passes that had come his way, and he wasn't bringing them down. The whole team had been dealing with drops as well, along with some of these inaccurate passes. And this would be the most glaring of them all. Because, yes, we can look back to the fourth down plays failing for the Chiefs here. But this, with a chance for them to tie up the ball game still, despite all of that, would show you just exactly is like an example of what's going on with this team, I should say. Because it's just all madness. Like, Travis Kelce gets the ball and he's bobbling it all over the place. And it falls right into the hands of Azeez Al-Shaair. Right into the hands. And they pan over to the faces of Kelce and Mahomes. And again, they speak volumes. Just another one of those nights, huh? Like that is just unacceptable. And the Texans would promptly get a field goal drive, taking out essentially the rest of the game to do so, with them winning 20-10. And what was definitely a bit of a defensive bout, but it had been that way in the playoff game. And you figured that this was going to be coming. If you're the Chiefs, you won that one. And you just completely cratered as an entire team. Even if you were at a little bit of a disadvantage. Do I even bother reading off the stats to you? Because if you are an offensive-minded person, especially for this game and the next one that I'm about to get into, you probably don't want to hear this. Try this on for size. Neither quarterback in this game finished with over 50% completion. In fact, in a chaotic year for Patrick Mahomes, this could be the worst performance he's had as a quarterback. He did have 219 total yards, but had 3 interceptions on 42.4% completion. And the Chiefs were okay in rushing the ball, but even that wasn't enough to save them by that point. Xavier Worthy had 3 receptions for 55 yards, and Marquise Brown had a reception for 35 yards in this game, while Rashee Rice had 4 receptions for 34 yards. Shit got so bad, in fact, and I probably should have talked about this play too, but akin to how Aaron Rodgers was damn near forced into an interception, and it ended up being a negative reception for negative 9 yards with Teddy Buchanan burying him in the backfield. You also had Patrick Mahomes end up in a situation where he had a negative reception in this game. Yeah. Okay. That's very normal. Nick Bolton, Andrew Tranquill had 12 and 10 tackles respectively, with Bolton having 2 TFLs as well. As for the Texans, CJ Stroud had 48.4% completion for 203 yards. Not pretty, but he protected that ball. And again, when you're getting in games this close, turnover margin, time of possession is going to matter. It's going to. That is how it is. Now, it wasn't all great for them on offense. They ran for just 82 yards on 2.6 yards per carry, but you do have to credit Woody Marks for being able to at least hang in there, take on all that responsibility, and still produce at an effective enough level to get the job done. Nico Collins had 4 receptions for 121 yards, and Jaden Higgins had 3 receptions for 34 yards. Tommy Togiani, Ohio State man, had 10 tackles, a sack, a TFL. Kamari Lassiter had an interception and 2 pass deflections. Jalen Petre had 6 tackles, an interception, and 2 pass deflections. Sheldon Rankins had a half sack. Nico Autry had a half sack. And Will Anderson Jr., even without logging a sack, more than made his own impact in this game. And that was the game plan, honestly, for the Texans. And they ran that shit to perfection. Now you have the Texans still in the hunt, and the Chiefs are pretty much on the outside looking into the playoffs. In fact, it got to a point where they, given how other things have shaped up in their own division, they can't become AFC West division champions. Now, they are out of the running for that. And the hopes for a playoff bid for them are getting even weaker. It's tough, man. Mahomes also in this game had a career-long 10 straight incomplete or intercepted passes. I think capped off very much so by that whole situation involving Travis Kelce. So yeah, definitely crazy. But now to a game that was just like I can't put this into words. But I'm going to try my hardest, okay? Eagles-Chargers on Monday Night Football. I did think this was going to be a pretty good game, and it was a pretty good game. It was. Especially if you look at it through a defensive lens. I mean, literally. This was a dream for any up-and-coming player who wants to play defense in the pros. This was your kind of night. Truly. Seriously. Really. It was somewhat normal. Although I definitely should have suspected something was up when Jason Oweh sacked Jalen Hurts on the first drive. I should have known some shit was up right then and right there. But in all seriousness, the Chargers would get themselves on the board first by having Kimani Vidal break out of the backfield for a 60-yard gain, though he still wasn't fast enough to get away from Zach Bond. Amarian Hampton was also called back up off IR, and he would get himself into the end zone for a 4-yard touchdown catch to get the first score here. Fair enough. Looked like the Eagles for a second as well, with a couple of Saquon Barkley runs back-to-back, have been starting to figure it out after they've struggled all season long to get him open rushing lanes. Between carries back-to-back of 19 and 10 yards, it looked like they were trying to build the foundation for that. And they kept it going for a little bit, even got a good gain on the second long run. But ultimately, when we got deeper into their territory, Devontae Smith was held very much in check. And that would be the theme for most of this game. In regulation, he had 3 receptions for 9 yards. In regulation. And even that kind of gives it away. But the Eagles would settle for a field goal. And then chaos. You already know what I titled my college football recap at this point. And you got even more of that for the NFL Week 14 game here to cap off the week, because everything that would go on from this point just legitimately either got you hyped up, got you confused, or maybe infuriated the shit out of you. There's not really a lot of in between for this. Even if you are not a fan indebted to either one of these football teams, because truly you have to step back and ask yourself, what the fuck happened? This initial play that Mickens, the backup rookie safety for the Chargers, got on Jalen Hurts was overturned, but even that was just kind of teasing what was to come. You do have to give both of the defenses credit, though. I mean, truly. Like, even when we got in situations where punts were forced, between what Jordan Davis was doing in the backfield and what Nakobe Dean was doing as a blitzer, getting unaccounted for up the gut and even overpowering at multiple points Vidal and Hampton when they tried to pass protect, getting in Justin Herbert's grill. That definitely had an effect on how they operated their offense in this one. Same way as well with Jalen Phillips continuing to be a force on the outside. And while they didn't have Jalen Carter, and I guess people thought that would hurt them tremendously, they were bowling the fuck out there as a defense regardless of that. Not to mention Cooper DeJean and Ladd McConkey with the matchup of all matchups going in favor of Cooper DeJean on multiple occasions in this game. Ladd McConkey himself did not have a single reception for a good amount of the first 3 quarters of the ball game. But the Eagles as well would suffer a number of miscues themselves. A number of them. And to just put it into perspective, you have to look no further than the very first one. Even with them unlocking the passing to Dallas Goedert in A.J. Brown for 22 yards down the field. You had such an unexplainable play take place here. Even me trying to rationalize this won't make sense. You had to see it to believe it at this point. Because Deshaun Hand would get out on a curl, essentially, a zone, and lurk Jalen Hurts into a pick. Gets a little bit of a return, and Will Shipley instinctively punches the ball out. Now there's a scramble for it. And all of a sudden, somehow, some way, Jalen Hurts gets it back. But rather than doing what people consistently told Cam Newton he should have did in the Super Bowl, he pirouettes around with the ball in his hands. And he fumbles it again with a different D lineman for the Chargers, forcing it out. And then Travis Dye gets the ball right back. So you flip possession 4 different times, essentially, on this play, alone. That alone would break your mind trying to understand in real time. And it gets worse. It gets worse. The Chargers would at least manage to get on the board. But, yo. Man, because, I mean, hey, you have to give credit to Tuipulotu as well for getting an initial stop on the play before, and also being one of the better pass rushers that the Chargers have to offer, right? But Dante Jackson would work the hell out of Jalen Hurts this time. And they would promptly give up a short field. Then in just a single play, the next play, Nakobe Dean wrecked Justin Herbert completely in the backfield, forced a sack fumble, and had Byron Young pick it back up. All the Eagles could muster was a field goal, but with the amount of chaos that had taken place already, and hey, with Saquon Barkley getting a few good runs here before Tank Bigsby actually got a change of pace in, you got to be content with something. Even then, mind you, they got in goal-to-goal territory, and where they would typically rely on the tush push, they instead were forced far back on a no gain, a penalty, and then another fumble, initially ruled at the time, being converted into an incomplete pass via challenge. But hey, even then, you had to leave with something, I guess. Even better fortunes almost fared for the Eagles here, as you would have a case where Jalen Phillips would force Justin Herbert into the most immaculate pressure imaginable, and it affected the throw just enough for Adoree Jackson, who's typically gotten picked on as an Eagle. He would get the pick, and they would also, with whatever the hell Kimani Vidal was thinking about doing here, they got an additional 15 yards. So now they're in a position to get points back. They had enough time to take a shot. They missed a shot, fair enough. But, you're in a dome stadium. You're in good field goal range. Jake Elliott could make this. He missed it from 48 yards out to end off the half. I mean, 6 turnovers in the first half for both teams was the very first time that this happened. And it just continued to get even crazier, even wackier. But hey, both offenses would have a little bit of normalcy. The Chargers did get initially stopped as they were moving down the field, but it did help that they extended their drive because Maro Ajelmo, for some reason, thought he could get up high enough with the help of pushing over linemen to deflect the kick. And you can't do that. But they'd still manage to get the stop anyway to force the field goal. The Eagles themselves, with passing, would have A.J. Brown down the field for 26 yards. And again, like, even though those corners are good and Harden still, like, he's got the physicality to beat them whenever he feels like it. This was one such play. Unfortunately, it felt like the Eagles were getting back into the nature of not opening up the rushing lanes for Saquon Barkley. It forced him behind the line of scrimmage, and they were not able to overcome that. But at least Jake Elliott would make the 54-yard field goal because that makes way more sense. Nonetheless, even with all this, this was a one-possession game. And Jalen Hurts nearly forced a sack fumble on Justin Herbert again, but then you had the converted fullback and fucking Shane Matlock recover it. Somehow, some way. Still, Zach Bond and Jordan Davis, in just a matter of a few plays, would combine to completely fuck him up. And ultimately force the punt. And then, after waiting so much time this season for it, so much time, you had this man, Saquon Barkley, finally get out in space, get an open lane, and break through for a 52-yard touchdown in a season that has been marked by the overall inability to get him explosive runs out in space. And he took that shit right to the house. Eagles took that lead right back. All of a sudden, if they were really finding it, they could have put the game away. They were riding high immediately as that happened. And ultimately, they'd have to fall back down to earth. They did allow McCarthy to get the catch on this drive. And scrambling would also become a problem. There were times at the later stages of this game where the defense was still great and Nakobe Dean was getting the pressure that he wanted on Justin Herbert, but he broke loose because Dean just whiffed on a few of these plays, unfortunately. And without him accounting for that, they didn't have an answer at points, but they were ultimately able to force the punt here. And then, they fell right back down to earth after this catch from Cooper. For whatever reason, man. I don't know. And granted, this one, you can't really give Jalen Hurts too much slack for. It hit A.J. Brown right in the hands. Hit him right in the hands, bro. And you had Jalen Hurts be docked for the interception here by Cam Hart. There's nothing that can be done about that. Clean through. They tell you to have your hands in like a diamond shape and get ready for the pass. And it slipped right through there. There's nothing that Jalen Hurts can do about that. One of the only times that you can say this, because we'll get into a situation where, oh my fucking goodness. All right. Not get too far ahead of myself here. The Chargers would tie up the ball game with Keenan Allen also contributing to the drive, and then you just get consecutive 3 and outs. Ultimately, with minimal time left, A.J. Brown single-handedly had a chance to end the game. He had already gotten multiple 15-plus yard gains here, and they damn near had him get a touchdown pass. Manned up on Cam Hart, no safety help at all. It was thrown in a great spot. It was thrown in an immaculate spot. and he had his hands on it. But Hart, at the very last second, got his arm jammed right in there and deflected it. Smart play by him. Ultimately, they would settle for a field goal, and the Chargers would have to get on the offensive rather quickly while trying to overcome all of this good coverage on McCarthy early and often. Yet they were bailed out because Quinyon Mitchell would decide to just grab onto somebody. And with a combination of Justin Herbert really just taking it upon himself to scramble when the opportunity presented himself, he would eventually be stopped on third down, and the Chargers would also settle for a field goal, taking this to overtime, where that really just continued. Justin Herbert would once again capitalize off of a whiff from the blitz and get out in space. Amari and Hampton also got himself an 18-yard run, but when they needed to tighten up, the Eagles defense tightened up, and they can live with the fact as a defense that they did their job. They did their job. They just need something, anything from the offense. Even if we're going into a situation where you're talking about the difference in turnover margin. Bro, they also forced 3 themselves. They more than handled their business. And yes, Justin Herbert might not have been playing at his best given the fact that he had hand surgery the week before. Like, he was definitely inaccurate in this game. He did not have the greatest passing day in the world, but that is also a testament to what the Eagles were doing and how they were guarding him. And they still, through all of the struggles that the Eagles themselves have been having, they put them in an opportunity, a grand opportunity to go out there and win this game in overtime. You had one job. And I mean, it was looking dire for them, but ultimately, Jalen Hurts would find Devontae Smith on a pretty good route over the middle for 28 yards to convert 3rd and 16. And they would also get a bailout a little bit with Jason Howe being in the neutral zone. But they were pushing the ball down the field, and they got into the red zone. And I cannot believe this shit. Because to talk about this real quick, to preface this, they have ran this play to Dallas Goedert all season long, where you could label it as an RPO, you could label it as a play action. Nonetheless, they have him slide over in the flat. And maybe there's a level concept there sometimes, but nonetheless, that flat route to Goedert is always open. And they more than likely will always get a solid gain out of it. So tell me why in this situation. In fact, in an earlier possession, it was there and Hurts just completely misses it somehow, some way. But okay, fair enough. It's going to happen sometimes. You get so accustomed to it that sometimes you just assume your player will make the play. Fine. But this one had no excuse. This had no excuse whatsoever. I'm not going to lie to you. Hart does a great job of playing the middle. But at that point, you have 4 turnovers by yourself. At this point, you are in striking distance. You don't need it all in one play. You don't. Hart might have had it one way or the other, but in that situation, you have to make the right decision. I'd much rather you throw it to Goedert and still get a short gain and go pick up whatever you need on the next play. You don't need to rush. This is before the 2-minute warning. And if you play it properly, you're going to have the last possession anyways. You don't need to force anything. What does Hurts do in this situation? He gets absolutely worked by Hart. He's reading him the whole time. And as soon as that ball is released, Hart makes the adjustment to get out near this corner route to Dotson. And he deflects it, diving out. It rotates up in the air, and it falls into the hands of the veteran in Tony Jefferson Sr. for the game-ending interception, as the Chargers would win this 22-19. Literally, you could have done anything else. Even throw the ball away if you're outside of the pocket at that point. And instead, you put it in harm's way. Granted, this has been the theme for the Eagles over the past few weeks, and I'll get to that in a second. Because, oh man, even with a game like this, you could say that with what I will talk about, it was always in the cards for them to have something like this go down. But as for the Chargers, they continue to keep the fight in the AFC West going. Justin Herbert, again, not a great day at the office by his standards. 205 total yards, a touchdown and an interception on 46.2% completion. Again, ultimately, the team as a whole found a way to win. They had 169 rushing yards on the ground on 4.4 yards per carry. Usually, it'd be a problem when Kimani Vidal is your leading wide receiver with the lone 60-yard grab that he had in literally the first quarter. Just such an unorthodox game altogether. So again, the fact that you come out on top in this one, you should be very much, at this stage of the season, honestly, you want to see your team perform in a much cleaner way than that. But you'll take the ugly win. And you know that your defense as well contributed mightily. Because to look at this from the Eagles' perspective, right? Even with it looking a little bit uncertain this season, they had only had 3 turnovers through the first 8 weeks of the year, one of the lowest marks ever in NFL history through that time span. And Jalen Hurts had still only had like a single pick or so. They have gone off the deep end in turnover margin over just the past few games that they've played in. And it's not hard to see why they've gone on a 3-game losing streak as a result of it. This, coming into it, they had like 7 turnovers in the last few games. And this was the icing on the cake. Jalen fucking Hurts. Just, like they say that he is typically a person who has been risk averse throughout his career and was off to that start this season. I don't know what's flipped. Truly. And it's just that kind of nature for the whole team. But 240 passing yards on 52.5% completion and a career-high 4 interceptions and 5 turnovers when you include the lost fumble. And you expect, even though you were still in the fight, That's the worst part. That's the worst feeling about this. You were still in the fight, and you could not shake that off at all. Like, what the hell is it going to take? Saquon Barkley had 20 rushes for 122 yards in the touchdown. A.J. Brown had 6 receptions for 100 yards. Dallas Goedert had 8 receptions for 78 yards. And Devontae Smith had 4 receptions for 37 yards. I mean, when you look at both defenses, man, the Eagles had 7 sacks as a unit. Jalix Hunt had 2.5. Jordan Davis had a monster game with 2 TFLs, 6 tackles, and 1.5 sacks as well. And the Chargers also accounted for 7 TFLs as a defense. It's like, I just, for the Eagles, man, and believe me, as a person who watched that 2023 Monday Night Football game between the Seahawks and the Eagles, where James Bradbury IV got targeted like crazy on that game-winning touchdown drive with Jackson Smith and Jigba getting the early clutch factor in and sealing that deal. I was there for that shit. I talked about that game. And even with some of the other games that I discussed at that time, the fact that the Eagles, oh my goodness. yeah. Similar position a few years back, where they just had the most unexplainable performance imaginable against the Jets in that game. Oh man. Like we're getting too similar, way too similar to how it was in 2023. Way too similar. Because if I remember that game correctly, man, there were just a shit ton of fucking turnovers in that game for Jalen Hurts then. That game was chaotic as hell. Yes. This game literally saw the Eagles here in this situation in 2023, although it was earlier in the season. We are talking about the Eagles in this game losing by 6 and turning the ball over 4 fucking times. And you one-up that in a higher stakes situation for your season down the line. It's like the parallels are just there, and it's not a good thing to see that. It's not. Like, it's just way too similar at this point. And I know a good amount of Eagles fans are panicking about that because there's no way that this is sustainable to any kind of success whatsoever. They have got to tighten up and get it together because you don't need a repeat of that. You just don't need it. You don't. Man. Well, that'll do it for all the game action that I tuned into and watched. But as for the other action here, Titans versus Browns, saw the Cam Ward-Shedeur Sanders battle become somewhat convincing, and yet just all the more confusing. Again, this was not a game that I watched live, but when you look at it, the Browns actually put together a solid performance offensively, one of their better days on the year. So they were competitive. Even with Myles Garrett not really getting in the backfield a ton against Cam Ward, as I expected, he did still get a sack, 4 tackles, and 3 TFLs in this game, logging his 20th sack on the year. He's just inching closer to that record. Carson Schlesinger would have yet another 12-tackle game. Like, I think at this point, honestly, with the way that they do talk about Schlesinger and with me seeing him play, it's fair to say he is deserving of this credit. Defensive Player of the Year or Defensive Rookie of the Year is probably coming down to either Schlesinger or Emmanwori. That's how it's feeling at this point. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, there are definitely a lot of other guys that might be considered for it, but I would think that those two are definitely in the upper echelon of the odds, potentially. They're very deserving of it. When it comes to that defense, though, I will say they actually did manage to keep Cameron Ward in a general struggle. He didn't really blow them out of the water with his arm. He had just 117 passing yards and 2 touchdowns with an interception. But with some of what I watched him post, they allowed this run game, a Titans run game that has been essentially dead all season long, to just heat up instantly. All of a sudden, you had fucking Tony Pollard take it back to his days with the fucking Cowboys. A 65-yard touchdown run, a different touchdown run later in this game from 32 yards out when they hadn't even smelled anything like that all season long. In fact, in this game, Tony Pollard would have his most productive day at the office on the season with 25 rushes for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns, his highest output since 98 earlier in the year, as they mentioned with what I saw in post. Like, it had not been effective all season long. He only had 92 yards as his season high before then, early in September against the Rams, and he damn near doubled that in this game. So from that standpoint, that's a bit embarrassing for the Browns. And also, man, I mean, I don't know, because they were in the fight, but with what I saw in post, man, I don't know what the hell the decision was on this 2-point conversion. You had to go for 2 anyways. But at this point, you already saw that Shedeur Sanders, despite throwing an interception in this game, had a tremendous day, became the first quarterback since 1950 for the Browns with at least 3 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, and 350-plus passing yards in a game. In a game. And you don't even trust him with the game on the line to even be involved in the play? Then you have Kevin Stefanski come out and say that, hey, he'll be the starter for the rest of the season. So we have that being the case now. And I guess the main takeaway from it would be this. Are you actually going to show that you have faith in him as a starter? You can say that, but then you go out and you have Quinshon Judkins. No disrespect to the Ohio State man, but a man who had been running just for 1.9 yards per carry in this game. And when the Browns' rushing attack had not been effective all day long, you lean on him to run Wildcat. Like, come on, make it make sense. Harold Fannin Jr. would have a hell of a day at the office. 8 receptions and 114 yards, along with a touchdown for him. Jerry Jeudy had 3 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown as well. Dylan Sampson and Quinshon Judkins both had more than 50 receiving yards out of the backfield. Also. And Gray for the Titans had 10 tackles in this game, while Jeffrey Simmons had 7 tackles, a half sack, 1.5 sacks, and 2 TFLs in this game. Continuing to be the dominant force that he is. At least he can say that his team won, I guess, at the end of the day. Moving on to the Dolphins and the Jets. Is there really much to say about this? I don't know. The Jets, I will say, they went over to the game and they acknowledged that they were wearing their rivalry jerseys in this. Poor Tom to wear them. Poor Tom to even think that you could remotely get away with trying to show off some flair and still play like fucking shit throughout this game. There isn't much to say here. All over the place. Although Tyrod Taylor, even though it was a rough day for him, would still go out of the game with an injury at the end of the day, and they had to have Brady Cook step in. They were up 21-0 before the first quarter even ended, and only ended up getting a touchdown after Isaiah Williams had to take it upon himself to get another special teams touchdown for this team. And they did not do anything afterwards. Like, all the Dolphins had to do, just take it easy. They didn't need to do anything. They didn't need to work for much. They already got them up and out of their own stadium. And this game ended in a 34-10 rout at home. But again, we look cool because we're wearing the rivalries jerseys. You think anybody gives a fuck about that? They can't deny how terrible you're playing in them. At least I look good. The fuck? Like, legitimately, Tua Tagovailoa didn't have to do anything in this game. He only had 127 passing yards and a touchdown. He didn't have to do much, especially with the way they ran the football. This is definitely a day where you could say that speed in the rushing attack worked out mightily for them. I guess they were saying that Devon Achane might have suffered a brief injury or something. I don't think it's too crazy. Regardless, though, when it comes to the efficiency, the team as a whole ran for 239 yards on 5.8 yards per carry and 3 total touchdowns. Ollie Gordon II got himself a touchdown as a rookie. Devon Achane, on just 7 carries, averaged 13.1 and had 92 yards in a touchdown. And Jalen Wright, the man from Tennessee, who has seen his role kind of shift. I mean, they drafted him, and he could have been an interesting piece to utilize, but they haven't really found that footing with him yet. He would have his best career day as a Dolphin, getting himself a 24 rush, 107 yard, and a touchdown day at the office for himself. So I'd say that's pretty productive from that standpoint. Like, it was legitimately that bad for Tyrod Taylor that you literally had him, after just 4 pass attempts, go out with this injury, and he had just 6 yards and an interception with a QB rating. And again, you hope that he gets better from this, because you hate to see him be in that position. But he deadass finished the game with a QBR of dead zero. Yeah. And Brady Cook in relief naturally was going to have it rough as well. Completing just 46.7% of his passes for 163 yards and 2 interceptions. And when the Jets can't run the football, you know they're screwed. They as a whole averaged just 3.6 yards per carry and had 65 rushing yards. Jamian Sherwood can at least say that he had a 15 tackle performance in this one with a TFL and 2 pass deflections. But outside of that, again, like, not much to speak of about this. This was just atrocious. Atrocious. And now they don't really know what they're going to do. Like, Brady Cook might have to be the guy, because Justin Fields is still in a spot where I think either he's injured or they just don't trust him anymore. So, fucking pathetic, man. As for this game, the Saints and the Bucks, I think there was a torrential downpour here. They showed just how much the surface of the field was affected by whatever rain was going on down there. So it was naturally going to be a slugfest. And I mean, I just don't know how the Saints were able to do it. I really don't. This was a tie ball game. The Bucks evened it up with Bucky Irving getting out of the backfield for a 24-yard touchdown catch. And then afterwards, I don't. It just got so crazy for them. Between them allowing Tyler Shuck to get out in space and garner multiple long and I mean long, touchdown runs, one from 34 yards out, and then another just completely unexplainable one from 13 yards out, to essentially give them the lead late in the ball game. He was doing that as a runner. Meanwhile, the Bucs, while they would manage to have Sean Tucker get in the end zone himself, when it came to moving the ball down the field, they couldn't. Emeka Egbuka did not have a grand day at the office, just 2 receptions for 15 yards on non-targets. And that also goes hand in hand with the fact that they mentioned a graphic stating that Baker Mayfield was of a team and had an interception on passes that were 15 plus yards down the field. Again, yes, maybe the weather had something to do with that. But at a point, man, you got to be able to overcome that shit. Especially if you have the Saints of all teams at the exact same time, figuring it out and finding a way to move down the field anyways. I mean, come on, man. Like, you legitimately had a situation where Shuck might have fucking outplayed. Like, come on, man. That's unacceptable work. And the Bucs are just playing a very dangerous game. Like, the Panthers still have to play this team multiple times in the next few weeks, and they are right on their ass. With the amount of times that they just continue to slip like this. If they want to avoid something like that potentially happening, man. And I mean, again, you gotta look back into what they've been going through. It does help that at the very least they are apparently, from article and I saw from NFL.com, they're getting back both Jalen McMillan and Mike Evans, so that could open things up. They better hope it does. They better hope it does. I tell you, man. Because they truly do not want to deal with the ramifications of them potentially losing this division lead to the Panthers if that ends up going down. As for the numbers, Tyler Shuck would have a total of 199 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, along with an interception on 65% completion. Devin Neal, in relief for Alvin Kamara, would have 19 rushes for 70 yards and a touchdown. As for the Bucs, Baker Mayfield, 122 passing yards on 46.7% completion, along with a touchdown and an interception on 46.7% completion. The Bucs as a whole had 179 rushing yards as a team. And Chris Godwin Jr. had 5 receptions for 55 yards to lead the game in receiving yards. This game is just, oh boy. Okay, so there's a lot to discuss here, and honestly, it isn't even really about the game itself. Because you can essentially say that, yeah, you might have your questions about the Colts coming into this with how many below 500 teams they've beaten and how they've consistently crumbled over the past few weeks against quality opponents. Fine. And the Jags, this would be a battle for the top of the AFC South now. Given that slip, you would want the Colts to come into this game and try to figure it out, try to get back on the right track. Instead, they might have hit rock fucking bottom. And I'm not even joking. I'm not joking. See, literally, man, I was just talking out of my ass when I said that if the, I think it was abdominal area rib injury for Daniel Jones was a little bit more severe and he potentially got banged up on that, I was talking out of my ass saying that they would have to go all over the place just to find a replacement and ultimately find themselves in an unfavorable situation of trying to find a quarterback. And one of the first alerts that you get in this game is not about a score, even though Jonathan Taylor would get himself on the board with a touchdown run, even though that would happen. The worst possible thing that could have happened for Indianapolis did happen. Daniel Jones. Say what you want about him in the last few games, but he has truly turned around his career with his performance with this team. Would tear his Achilles and is now out for the season. And it, instantly, the Jags were carving out a little bit of an advantage anyways. They just completely took it over from them. Took a 28-10 lead at the end of the half, basically. And it just never got back in the Colts' favor. Truly never. Clean game for them, you can say. But, man, the outlook of the Colts is not looking promising. Especially when it came to this one, they would end up losing by 17 anyways. Then, to make matters even worse, Riley Leonard, who would come in for relief and have 145 passing yards, along with a rushing touchdown and interception, and complete 62.1% of his passes, he would also get injured at some point, apparently. And with Anthony Richardson Sr. still being out on IR. With the freak accident to his eye that he suffered earlier in the season, they literally don't know where to turn. This could be a tremendous disaster for them. Now, I'll talk about the numbers for the Jaguars real quick. Trevor Lawrence in this game had 244 passing yards and 2 touchdowns on 56.7% completion. Travis Etienne Jr. also added 20 rushes for 74 yards and 2 scores. Brian Thomas Jr. had 3 receptions for 87 yards. Tim Patrick had 5 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown. And Jacoby Myers had 4 receptions for 39 yards and a touchdown. But as for the Colts, man, they also, in this situation, were trying to lean heavily on Jonathan Taylor now because you don't even have a quarterback that proves as any sort of passing threat. And with that being the case, they were able to zone in on Jonathan Taylor. Usually, he's had his games where he's been able to overcome that, but this would be another situation where that just wouldn't happen. They forced a fumble on him early after this, and he would finish with just 74 rushing yards and a touchdown on 21 carries. Now, Pierce had 5 receptions for 80 yards, and Michael Pittman had 9 receptions for 79 yards. But this is still a tough situation for them. In a schedule that only gets a little tougher for them between having to deal with AFC South competition. They have to face the Jags again, and they have to face the Texans to cap off the season. Then, to make matters even worse for them, they got to face off against my Hawks next week, and then the 49ers afterwards. They could literally go from being one of the teams in prime position to get a 1 seed in the AFC just a few weeks back. And when you lose multiple guys that are that valuable to a team, this Colts team could very much slip out of playoff contention if they aren't careful. But again, with virtually nowhere to turn as a team in terms of finding a solution at quarterback, there's only so much you can do. And so they decided to do the weirdest thing imaginable. Not only was it reported by multiple NFL insiders that they would work out Phillip Rivers, but per Adam Schefter, they signed the now 44-year-old out of retirement to suit up and be the number 1 quarterback for this team moving forward. Now, I did see something about him working out Riley Leonard in his home before the draft last season. So from that standpoint, that can help a little bit, just a little bit. But in terms of actual play, we all know how the Phillip Rivers experiment in 2020 for the Colts came to an end, with him literally being on his last whimper and not even being able to get the routine passes in at that point. His arm, by that age, was fucked. His mobility, which has never been a part of his game, had completely deteriorated. And you are now expecting a man who hasn't been in football for years since that point, at an older age, and who is a grandfather, is was so affectionately put. This is, again, honestly, it's kind of laughable. It's kind of wild. It's unexpected. Can you truly blame the Colts at the end of the day for doing this, though? There aren't that many options on the market. There truly aren't. And I really don't know. I don't know what else they could have done. That's the scary part about this. But if this is the solution, man, oh man. Goodness gracious. Moving on to this iteration of the Broncos and the Raiders. I guess there was a little more offense. It was a little more competitive. It was a lot cleaner. But the Raiders themselves would still get the short end of the stick. They still can't run the ball. They had Ashton Genty average just 3 yards a carry, bro. They still can't run the ball. And that promptly left their combination of quarterbacks to be sitting ducks in the backfield. At some point, I guess, they just mentioned, as I just saw, Geno Smith is now injured after putting up a touchdown performance on 116 yards and 61.9% completion percentage. He's now out. They had Kenny Pickett come in relief and put up 97 yards passing, along with a touchdown on 72.7% completion. But if we're seriously relying on him, you have problems. You have problems. And yes, the Raiders are dealing with their fair share of that. I will say, shout out to, because I remember this person, Shedrick Jackson. They had him going off in the preseason. So to have him catch what I would believe is his first NFL touchdown pass, pretty damn good. And I guess they needed that kind of bright spot in a game in which they would end up dropping to a 2-11 record on the year. But this is just crazy. Because for the second time, the Raiders as a defense honestly play fine. They play fine. I mean, look it, man. Now, you can't control Marvin Mims Jr., even though he's a dynamic punt returner. You can't control him getting a punt return touchdown from 48 yards out. And yes, you want them to ultimately get these stops in the red zone, especially if you have both of the touchdowns coming from R.J. Harvey and Bo Nix in short distance. As a team, as a whole, for the Broncos ran for 152 yards off of the volume alone. Do credit Bo Nix for actually implementing some balance as well. Had 212 passing yards. Don't know why he's thrown the ball 38 times, but he completed 81.6% of his passes. So, okay, that's definitely that's a good thing, I guess. Seriously though, if you're the Raiders, man, you get yet another game where you have multiple Raiders just go crazy on defense. I mean, Jeremy Chin had himself an 11 tackle game with a sack, while Devin White, yes, that Devin White, had 19 tackles. And it still wasn't enough for you to come out and win this. This is why they have fallen so far as a collective throughout the season. This is why. Between all of that ineptitude and all of that, those opportunities just left on the board, man, you then get yourselves in situations where these teams, honestly, just slowly but surely take you out of a game. At least it's better than getting blown out, but, like, dude. Man. And then for the Rams-Cardinals to cap this off, this was no shocker. Even though the Cardinals had an early lead after getting Michael Wilson open for a touchdown on the first possession. The Rams, it was all them. They would win 45-17. Big shocker. Big shocker. Like, this Cardinals team has honestly, against every single one of the NFC West teams, not been able to hold their own. They haven't even come close. I mean, in just the span of the last few weeks, even though they were competitive with the Seahawks earlier, you had the Seahawks beat them by 22. You had the 49ers get that shellacking of a performance over them as they won by 19. And then you have the Rams do this to them by 4 fucking touchdowns. So we know exactly where the Cardinals stand. And again, it's not hard to see why they are now 3-10 on the season. Without watching the game live, it's safe to say the Rams definitely found their footing back on offense after a rough outing, to say the least, against the goddamn Panthers last week. I mean, all over the place. No matter where you turn, between Matthew Stafford dialing it back, having a cool composed 281 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 71% completion, between Blake Corum leading all Rams runners and all runners general with 12 rushes for 128 yards and 2 scores. Fuck Michigan. Team as a whole also had 249 yards and 3 scores, with Kyron Williams adding another one. You also had Puka Nacua get 7 receptions and 167 yards, along with 2 scores. Devontae Adams didn't get a touchdown in this game. That's kind of surprising. But he's still going to lead the league in receiving touchdowns with 14. As for the Cardinals, well, they've lost guys in their run game. But even with that being said, they can't run the ball. They can't run the ball. My goodness. 51 rushing yards on 3.6 yards per carry against the Rams team, who is going to initiate that kind of balance against you, was always going to be a tough mismatch. And Jacoby Brissett, for that matter, added 271 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, along with an interception on 56.8% completion. Michael Wilson has to be feeling himself, though. You know, yes, it does hurt them that Marvin Harrison Jr. is not healthy right now. But since that moment, man, he's been getting fed. Like, how many 100-yard games is this for a man who never even so much as had one, logged a 180-yard gain, and then in the past few weeks has had multiple 100-yard receiving games? I'm telling you. Like, that is That is wild to consider. And I mean, hey, you can't knock him for going out there and getting his. Matter of fact, let me see this. What is this about to say? What is this about to say? Wow. Wow. Yes, with those games, Michael Wilson, who had never before this season logged so much as one single 100-yard game, has more, per this Sporting News article, in the last 4 weeks in 3 than Marvin Harrison Jr. does with 2 in 27 fucking games. Mind-blowing. But it ain't leading to wins, though. It ain't leading to the wins. They are not even competing in these ball games. They're getting their asses handed to them. And, even with the questions surrounding Kyler Murray, different story for a different day, but they surmise with putting him on IR, they got people saying this could be his very last season with the team. He might have suited up for them for his final time. They're like, damn, okay, shit. Even if he does come back, this is the shit he has to deal with coming back. Who is supposed to succeed in that situation? I'm not sure. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.